Welcome to the ACC Panic Room alongside Lauren Brownlow. I'm Joe Ovias. NC State just beat Virginia Tech. Not sure how, but it happened. You got any explanations, Brownlow?
Aside from the most obvious one,
And that is?
the Atlantic Division, you know, the chant heard round the league all year. It's an awkward chant, though. It wouldn't really flow off the tongue. I just am
Yeah.
excited for the ACC title game where, Atlantic Division fans will show up in droves and support and chant that when it's all over. So good for them.
I
No, but
really
yeah,
I really do think it's about I really do think it's our friend Spencer Hall and every day should be Saturday. Uh Shut down full cast by pointing out that this is the ACC so intense you can only buy it on the dark web. That's what this game was all about.
yeah, because it wasn't, and I kept waiting for it. This is the true spirit of the Coastal, by the way. Their games are usually fun bad
Yeah.
when they get bad.
Yeah.
This was just sad bad for most of it for the offenses early on. Obviously NC State was struggling, so was Virginia Tech, and then
hmm
I was about to pass out in the second half when all of a sudden Virginia Tech's stringing up touchdowns. I'm like, where did this come from?
Yeah, that's when things started to get dicey and to put in perspective
To put it
what
mildly.
yeah, to put it in perspective of how things were going for Virginia Tech this season and what we saw in the third quarter where everybody was ready to fire Dave Dorn. And there are some people out there that are probably still ready to do that, which we can get to in a little bit, because I have some thoughts on the why NC State finally came back in this game.
Yeah.
But Andy Bitter, who covers the Hokies, pointed out that the end of the third quarter, the Hokies were up 21 to 10, and they had 251 yards in that quarter after just having 45 in the first quarter. And for comparison's sake, the Hokies' yardage in entire games this season included 284 against Boston College, 228 against West Virginia, 273 against that North Carolina defense, and they only put up 10 points in that game, and Miami 257. So it was pretty brutal for NC State's defense, which is actually one of the better defenses in the ACC. We all recognize that. We know it's their calling card. And
Yeah.
then Virginia Tech came into this game basically last in multiple categories offensively. I think they were dead last in yards per play. I want to say they were near the bottom of yards per carry, and their passing game was really non-existent as well. These are all
No, it's
strengths
the
for the
worst
Wolfpack.
offense in the league
It's
at
the
this
worst
point.
offense in the
It's
league.
not
So the,
debatable.
the question tonight, Lauren, was going to be what could NC State do offensively? And to me, that's really the story of the game. They had an open date to prepare for one of the worst offensive teams in the league. You just needed to get something going offensively. And what did we see in the first half? They punted on the 38-yard line, for heaven's sake.
Yeah, that one was I did not understand it. Someone unfollowed me over my tweet about it, but he was like, "I don't like your humor. Unfollow." I'm like, "Okay, whatever." But because I was like, "Wow, that might not be because yes, let's count on the mighty Virginia Tech offense to get a drive mounted from the 38 when I don't even know if they crossed midfield yet at that point."
Mm,
And I
mm.
mean, look, it's a tough situation. It's a fourth down. You're unlikely to convert. It's a long field goal, however you want to say it. But
Mhm.
the risk reward to me of going for it was really kind of negligible at that point. But whatever. It
Yeah,
works.
I wish look, after the Syracuse loss, you and I talked about scared money don't make no money,
Yep.
right? And it wasn't until late in that game against Syracuse when Tim Beck and the coaching staff were left with no choice but to start letting it loose because you had to get back in this game that they looked like they could get into some sort of rhythm. We saw the same thing play out against Virginia Tech tonight. It just happened to be against a worse team. Syracuse, obviously, we know after a pretty decent showing against Clemson, one of the ranked and everything else. Syracuse is a tough defense, but again, they got into a rhythm when they started to just show some confidence in the quarterbacks, show some confidence in the
In the
offense to go out
offense.
there and get
Yeah.
it. But the problem is, you think after all these days to prepare and knowing what you're going to go forward, I would have liked to have seen two things. I would have liked to have seen NC State's coaching staff decide on a quarterback, likely MJ Morris, because he's the
Yeah, I
future.
think
I
I
get he's
think
a
that
freshman.
decision's been made already.
Yeah, I feel like that decision should have been made before the game. And obviously,
I
we're doing
tend
this
to
panic
agree.
room.
Yeah.
Was that?
I tend to agree. Yeah. Like I'm confused based on what we saw him do when he took over as the guy, basically, versus what
Yeah.
we've seen before that. And
In
even Devin Leary, they weren't letting throw downfield. I don't feel like ever as much as they were letting MJ Morris throw it. I was confusing.
Because they had no choice. Again, it gets back to that no choice. So
Right.
to your point about Devin Leary, we have to be honest about how the offense has been running this year, and we've gone through it multiple times. The offensive line is not as good as expected. Wide receivers have not stepped up or developed the way that they had expected. They've been banged up too. Running game has been a little bit banged up. Jordan Houston had a good job icing the game there at the end. Demi Sumo had been a bright spot, but again, he seemed to be banged up, and obviously we
Yeah.
don't really know what's going on. And in fairness to NC State, we're not there for practice. Okay, we don't know how MJ Morris is developing during practice. We don't
Well,
know
and
how things were
you
game
can
planned.
see that he's raw for
Yes,
sure. But
and
I
that's but
mean,
but that's the thing for me.
yeah.
If you know your season is not going to go the way that you thought it was going to go, right? Devin Leary gets hurt. Season's over for him. You lose to Clemson and Syracuse, and at this point, NC State fans want to see what you got at this point. As I saw some of my friends on Twitter pointed out, man, at some point you'd think Dave would be coaching like a guy who has like, all right, fine, like I got nothing to lose now, so let's just let it rip. Where I'm coaching for my job, so to speak, even though he does have job security at NC State. And there's people who want him fired. I mean, that's a silly thing. He might leave for somewhere else, but he's not getting fired. So you just want to see him do something, right? Mix it up at this point. Get creative with it. Instead, they just play super, super conservative to their own detriment, and their defense eventually broke in the third quarter. It's not lost on me that once the offense showed some life, that the defense fed off that,
Yeah.
and there's your ball game.
That's called complementary football. But the thing is, yeah, you're right. Like, I think at this point, they get bowl eligible with that win. I think they did. State.
Yeah, that'd be 6-2.
Because, I mean, honestly, in the first half of that game, I was looking at them like, are they going to? I mean, I'm just going to be real. Like, from
Yeah,
what
that's
we've
fair.
seen of that offense, and then with a
That's
bye
fair.
week to kind of tweak some things, like you said, you're like, well, if this is the best they can do offensively, it might be about all she wrote. Because it's not, by the way, like Virginia Tech's defense has made some improvements, but it's not very good still.
It's
not
that.
good.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. Like, it's not a good defense. Like, you got to be able to move the ball against them, you would think, at least. And I hope the lesson that they take out of this is that they want to win more of the games on their schedule than they're supposed to, then they're going to have to take that approach. Like, there's just no choice at this point. You got to go full YOLO, or it's not going to happen for you. Like, you're going to upset the fans in the process too, because that's the other part of it. You could hear the discontent of that crowd on TV, and it almost even felt like apathy in that first half. You could feel it really settling in. Like, there's the grumbles you can kind of hear, but it's also just like this resignation of like, well, I guess this is what this team is. Nobody's going to want to watch this the rest of the season, like just trying to play, let the defense save us over and over again. Because even if I think the lesson you learn here is even an offense like Virginia Tech, who has not been good, like been terrible, in fact, even if you let them hang around long enough, you're not good enough to score enough points at this point. Like, you've got to be more aggressive. There is no more choice left here. Like, you want to win some of these games against Wake and State and or Carolina and whoever you got coming, you better be willing to take some shots.
That's where I was going. That's where I was going
picture.
with this picture. Bless the NC State fan who was caught. This is when Virginia Tech was about to go up 21-3. And I had jokingly tweeted out that this guy's not actually reacting to Virginia Tech scoring. I think he's realizing, oh my God, if Virginia Tech is doing this to us, what the hell are North Carolina and Wake Forest going to do with Sam Hartman and Drake May and the way that they run their offense?
No, you saw that being tweeted out too. Yeah,
yeah, absolutely. And that gets back to the scared money don't make money. The open date actually came at a time that was pretty beneficial for NC State. I know Dave Doran talked about that he's not had one this late as he's been coach at NC State, but I feel like it actually worked out pretty well for him. It gave him an opportunity to reassess what they were going to do with the offense. Instead, they came out with more of the same, and you saw how that worked out for him. And this is two games now, the Syracuse game and the Virginia Tech game now, where they find themselves down, and they've had to fight and claw back. They lose one of them too little too late. They managed to pull this one out because Virginia Tech is not as good as Syracuse. You can't afford to do that against Wake Forest. You cannot afford to do that against North Carolina. You have to basically go into the game and Jedi mind trick yourself into thinking, well, we're already down 21-0. Because that's what it's going to be like when you play Wake
Yeah.
Forest. And look, as good as NC State's defense is going to be, they cannot muck up that game enough against a team like Wake Forest or the way that we've seen things going with North Carolina. So this is your opportunity to get it going with MJ Morris, who is raw, but at least give him the opportunity to
Got a good arm.
He's got a good, like, if you're going to lose with, like, as Giglio likes to say, go out with your fastball, right? At least try. Don't play so conservatively that you end up kicking yourself for not going a little bit harder. That's what NC State has going for it in the next game against Wake Forest. Go out there and sling it around best you can, because otherwise you're going to get crushed by the Demon Deacons.
Just go YOLO. Yeah. I mean, it's a tricky matchup for a lot of defenses for sure, but like, you cannot settle for field goals in that game.
No.
You got to be scoring touchdowns. And I know they believe in that defense, and I get why. They've certainly proven enough that they should be believed in, but like, I mean, in those two games especially, I keep thinking about it, and it's like there's literally no way that they can do anything other than just go for it. Although I will say this, what would the rule have been if they'd lost to the worst team in the Coastal? What would we have done with that?
What do you mean?
Like if they lost to the worst team on the Coastal off a bye at home on a Thursday night.
Actually, well, okay, well, a couple things.
Would they officially have to retire the takes, or?
Well, two things. I had two thoughts on this. The first one is I was having, Giglio and I last week, a couple weeks ago, talked about the similarities or the possible similarities between Dave Doran and Herb Sendek, right? Where if he wants to stick around, he can stick around. Herb Sendek was in the same boat too, right? But things got so just apathetic, or in Herb Sendek's case, a little bit nasty, that he'd be foolish to come back. Like, why am I going to put up with this crap? Why am I going to put up with this for another year? So I'm off to Arizona State. It's funny enough, Arizona State's job is available.
That doesn't strike me as a compatible job with Dave Doran whatsoever.
It doesn't, but it's possible that Kansas could open up, right? Or Iowa State could open up, right?
Kansas would make some sense, yeah.
Sure. So, try to win in the Big 12. But the point is that as I'm watching this unfold, if NC State had lost, I'm sitting here thinking, man, this is 06 Wake Forest lost at the ACC tournament, Where some NC State fans, if you want to make football comparable, this is Tom O'Brien losing to Virginia in 12, right?
Oh yeah, I'll never forget that.
So
I was so mad at them. So mad at them. Like, I'm like, you just did a good thing,
right? And
why are you like this? That Virginia team was awful too. Like, it was not.
It really was.
I mean, I know football is weird, but that's part of it, and it's like the only point I've always been trying to make to State fans mostly is like, sure, if you were in the Coastal, things might overall be easier. Your chances would be better. But the Coastal is very powerful. I'm telling you, it pulls everybody into its vortex. Like, it's not, you're not a dominant enough force to avoid Coastal chaos and whatever that means. You're not. Few teams are.
A very good UNC follow, Daggum Box Scores, had pointed out that it was entirely possible that Virginia Tech was going to be 2-0 against the Atlantic, despite the fact that they've had a point differential in the Coastal that's abysmal. And that's when I had this meme ready to go where, wait, has the Coastal always been the more difficult division to win? Yeah. Always has been, because of the reasons why you just laid out, Lauren. Just all the reasons that you just laid out.
It's not because like the teams are better. That's not even the point.
No.
It's not. It's just because whatever it is about that division just stops making sense the moment football kicks off every year. It's just what happens. And even, within games, like, you're just like, why are you doing this? And you can never really know the answer to the questions. Why are you doing this? But like, the better question to be asking is how many Coastal fans would do, or how many Coastal teams would do well in the Atlantic? That to me is more how you measure it. Okay.
Probably.
That's an argument I will hear. I don't understand the other argument if we do XYZ in the Coastal, unless you're Clemson, because you would.
So I need for you to verify something for me. I paid you a visit this
Yes.
evening. Watched the first half of the NC State Virginia Tech game at your place. It's been a while since we caught up, so rather than this StreamYard business, so I was there. So the candles were not lit at that point in time.
I
I
see.
got I got back home. I realized, you know what? I haven't lit the candles yet. And the one that you see on the left in the little jar is actually the curse reverse candle, the original curse reverse candle that I bought in New Orleans that started this whole thing. I hadn't lit it in a while. I lit it. What happened, Lauren?
Yeah, things turned around. I was gonna say my friend LK stopped by, who you also know as
Hmm.
well, and she was there when Virginia Tech built the 21-10 lead or whatever. Was it 21-10 or 21-3? It was 21-3, right?
It's 21-10.
21-10, and then she was like, I'm out. She's a state fan as well, so she's like, I'm out. I need to get home. And then like literally she texted me not long after, like she was just in her car and they scored. Like State scored right after, and she's like, all right, so it was me. It was my
Yeah.
fault.
Look, the universe is funny like that. The universe is
Yeah.
funny like that. Anyway, that's going to wrap it up for this edition of the ACC Panic Room. NC State managed to not choke on the turkey, and looks like they might have found a quarterback in the process. What? It's a Hokie. It's a Hokie, Lawrence. Thanksgiving's right around the corner. Work with
Is
me
it?
here. Work with me. Work with me here. Yeah, maybe not. We'll see y'all this weekend with a huge North Carolina Pitt showdown. Will the Pitt super weapon activate and make North Carolina
This
stumble? We shall see.
I'm super intrigued by that game, by the way,
I am
because
too.
mostly because I have no clue what's going to happen. And then North Carolina has a number next to their name now, and we know what that's meant in recent years for them.
Hmm.
But I also saw Pitt last weekend, and basically, like my review of their performance would be a fart noise. So
We'll see y'all.